Hey guys, what's up? Welcome everybody back to another video here on the channel. Hope y'all are doing well, and this is actually going to be the first video in a brand new series that we're going to be trying here on the channel, in which you guys in the comments below bring up topics of discussion for me to make a video on and elaborate, and then for you guys to give feedback on that as well. But the cool part about this series is that you guys get to pick the topic of discussion, and I'm going to go through the comment section of each video and pick out one that I feel like would be good to talk about. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to come up with a name for this series that I really like yet. I'm still going to be working on that, but as soon as I can figure out a name of what to call this, then that's probably what these videos are going to be titled from here on out. But the idea is going to remain the same throughout all of them. It's you guys obviously leave topics and then we discuss them in a video. And so today's topic of discussion is from Emperor Cryo, and he wants to talk about how the meta has changed in PUBG from season 1 to where we are currently. And this is a really good topic, I think, because now not only can we discuss how the game has fundamentally changed in terms of its mechanics and how those have evolved and gotten better over time, but we can also talk about how the skill of players and knowledge of the average gamer has increased in this and how that's affected the game. So it should be a really interesting discussion, a little trip back down memory lane, looking at some old gameplay and stuff. So that's essentially the idea of this series, and it's going to be entirely community driven. So that being said, I know this was kind of a long intro, but I wanted to explain what's going on, and I'm hoping you guys enjoy this. So if you want to see the series continue, go ahead and drop a like rating on the video. It would really show me that you guys support this, and of course make sure you do subscribe if you're new to the channel so that you don't miss out on these videos when they do come out. We'll probably do this maybe once or twice a week. Back in the earliest days of PUBG, one of the biggest differences that you're going to notice compared to Battlegrounds in 2020 is the severe lack of weapon variety that we're used to now. We pretty much have a complete arsenal at our hands, and there's a lot of variety within that weapon arsenal itself, but back in the earliest days, there was a much less of a conscious choice about what you wanted to run and how you wanted to play the weapon. It was more or less just circumstance, whatever you could find, and this is how you got by. For the most part, the fate of your game was decided upon the loot that you could find or loot off other players. Sometimes you could have a great circle position, but if you just didn't have the firepower to bring it home, you probably weren't going to win. Also, for a long time, third-person perspective was literally the only way you could play the game, and this is how it was designed. This is how it was originally intended. They added a first-person mode later due to popular demand, and for reference, I think that you can play both ways, and you know, they're both legitimate. I prefer first-person as this seems to be the more competitive experience and fair in my opinion. Even though I don't really play third-person perspective that much anymore, I don't denigrate it at all as a way to play the game, and I think both perspectives are legitimate ways to experience PUBG. And also, any old-time veterans of PUBG all got started playing third-person perspective as well, and so this was just sort of the normal way to play the game for a very long time, and then that eventually changed when first-person came out. PUBG also underwent a lot of major changes when it comes to weapon balancing and how some of them are distributed. There were a lot of weapons in the game that we take for granted that used to be regarded as crate weapons, i.e. the Tommy gun, the VSS. These weapons were just used to having as common spawns, and we see them virtually every single game, but they were regarded once as some of the best weapons in all of PUBG. Not only was the game lacking a little bit in weapon variety, which eventually got fixed as they added, new stuff, and the game continued to grow. That was normal, but there was also a lack of variety when it comes to attachments. For the longest time in the game, there were only 2 grips available. This was the vertical and the angled grip, and some of you old PUBG players may remember this. It was like that for around a year, if not more. And of course, when it came to your scope options, the only choices you had were the 2x, the 4x, the 8 times, and then if you were really lucky, you could get the 15x out of crates, but that was it. There was no 3 or 6, and the hollow and red dot were also in primitive versions of themselves, and so that eventually got mitigated. The new grips got added, as well as the new scopes. The 3 and 6, honestly, are some of my new favorites in the entire game. I wasn't very warm to them at first. I preferred the classic scopes, but now I think they fit in perfectly with this game alongside the grips. Even the weapons had a lack of customizability themselves. For a long time, believe it or not, you could only put like 2 or 3 attachments on the SKS. They eventually fleshed it out to across all weapons, where now you could add like a grip and then a muzzle attachment and then something on the back of the gun along with a magazine, and then this completely changed the customizability and how you want to run your gun that's personally specified for you. The typical player strategy back then was a lot different as well than it is now. For example, back in the day, the bridge used to be a place where if you could be relatively set up and then the plane went over the military base, you could guarantee yourself at least 10 to 15 people are going to try and cross that bridge, because not only did they weren't aggressive enough to, kill each other during the military drop, off, but they all have to come off when the blue pushes them. So you were guaranteed a ton of people to come down these bridges, and it got absolutely insane. Nowadays, more people die often than not when they hot drop before they even get to the bridge, and then some people find alternative routes where they don't have to necessarily take that, and they can take the safer option. Throwables in the earlier seasons were not nearly as prominent as they are now. It was pretty much just due to the fact that nobody knew how to really throw them. You know, you would toss out an odd grenade every now and then, maybe get lucky and get a kill, but for the most part, there wasn't this grenade spam at the end of every game, and there wasn't like being able to tactically bank shot and then get people up in, you know, popular camped corners. Nowadays, we know grenades can do some pretty nutty things, and I would still argue that they're probably the most overpowered piece of equipment in the entire game, but back in the earlier seasons, they weren't really a problem just because no one really knew how to throw them at all. You also might remember a long time ago, level 3 helmets used to be common spawns on every single map. Nowadays, they're only on Vikendi, which I assume in Vikendi Remastered will probably be the same thing, but you could just find a level 3 helmet as a common spawn in like Erangel or Miramar. They changed this when everyone was starting to get good with sniper rifles and realized that if somebody has a level 3 helmet, your bolt action sniper is pretty much useless. Even when the M24 was still a crate weapon and it was stronger than the Kar 98, it still wasn't quite enough to one-shot a level 3 helmet at full HP. That ability belonged strictly to the AWM, and they changed this, and I think this was probably one of the most positive things they could have done for the game, because now it made bolt-action snipers not only viable to use, but very rewarding if you hit headshots as well, and so I think this is probably one of the best big changes they could have made for this game. I was very skeptical about it, as some of you may know when this was happening. I think I made a video talking about my concerns for it, but like hindsight is 2020, and we can look back at this change and say, yeah, that was a very positive thing they did. Over time, the average player's gun skill has increased to what would be like a pro level in the earliest days of PUBG, and I find that really fascinating because PUBG has already had probably the most interesting and difficult gunplay of any FPS I've played, and that's currently. Back then, the fact was pretty much nobody knew how to shoot in this game. You know, we weren't very good at it. And even I would argue if you put an average PUBG player, you pick them out of a lobby today, and then you drop them into what would be, you know, back in time in a pre-alpha lobby, even with some of the best players at the time, the average player now would still smoke those guys. PUBG's gunplay was meant to be very difficult. It's meant for you to put thousands of hours to really get down and master the gunplay. And without that time of experience that we had earlier in the days, then it was a lot more interesting when it came down to how a gunfight was going to play out. It came a lot down to the weapon you're using, along with your skill level with that weapon. That skill curve per each weapon and per player has been equalized out a ton over time. It seems like pretty much now everybody can run the Kar 98 and be viable with it. There's going to be some people that are better at it than others, but you get the point. Back then, you would pick up a gun that maybe you weren't very experienced with, or it was brand new. For example, the Mini 14, when that came out, you would pick it up and just tell yourself, yeah, I don't know how to use this weapon. Now, there was a lot of fun in that because it became something brand new to learn. The same concept applies to vehicles. You might remember for a long time, vehicles were just a way to get around the map. You know what I'm saying? You didn't do anything fancy or crazy with them. Nowadays, it seems as if almost every player knows how to do drive-bys and can do them relatively well. Cars were just a way to get to a place quicker. Maybe chase down an airdrop or, you know, run out the zone, something like that. You didn't shoot from cars very much unless you were playing duos, and even then it was not a super viable option because the shooting was already hard enough, and then doing it from a moving vehicle just only multiplied that difficulty. But now it seems like everybody can shoot from their vehicle, and I just think it's funny to think about if you had taken the skills you know now, especially like drive-bys and that sort of thing, and then brought them back into like the pre-alpha days, you went back in time, you would be regarded as an actual god. You would be so far ahead in terms of skill and knowledge than players back then. It just wouldn't even be fair. Even though it's the same basic game, you would just have a fundamental, deeper understanding than virtually everyone else. A huge thing that evolved was looting. I was looking back at some of my very old gameplay and also gameplay from other people who are really good players now, and if you look at the speed of which we looted back in the day, even with less items, it was at a snail's pace compared to how quick we are on, you know, getting items now. It's just absolutely unbelievable. There was actually a time in the game where you could catch people looting bodies out in the open and shoot them. Now, you can pretty much loot a body even with like fully stacked items in 2 or 3 seconds if you're quick. And I remember in the the earliest days, that would used to take someone like maybe 20, 30 seconds, even up to a minute if you were really taking your time on looting. And so it's absolutely fascinating how these mechanics have changed over time. The way that players have evolved to respond to these challenges and then get better at them, along with the average skill gap of each player as well, it's really cool to look back at. And I had a lot of fun re-examining my old gameplay to see what changed and that sort of thing. And these were the kind of biggest takeaways that I got from all of that. And I think this is pretty nostalgic to even talk about. And so I want to know what you guys think about this. Do you remember these earliest days of PUBG and how the meta has changed? And also, whatever topic you want to see of this series next, leave that in the comment section down below. Whatever you want to hear about, I'm going to read through all the comments, so make sure you do let me know. But anyways, guys, if you did enjoy this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you are brand new to the channel. And also, guys, right now I'm streaming over on my Twitch channel. Link is in the description, so make sure you go drop me a follow, and I'll see you over there. It's a great place to be. But other than that, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I gotta go. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.